Hello and welcome to another episode of my Lost in Transition podcast to nowhere space video versions. My name is Allie with Amory Speaks, and this is an unnumbered episode, sort of a brainstorming that I'm going to tag along with my last video, which was just a real video and part of a real series that I actually offer on YouTube for a purpose, which is deconstructing distortions. I won't give a whole spiel and sell the deal to you here on that series. If you're interested in watching it, you can definitely check that out. I'll put a link in the description, but chances are if you're finding me on YouTube right now, you are part of a rare audience who's listening to me over there, because I lost my old channel at the end of 2024 and have come to use my backup channel, and it is slow in the rolling, and I'm slow in the going as well. Previously years, I was putting out a lot more content, a lot more continuously, at least a couple of times a week, and some weeks go by and I just put out just my Friday reading video, and I don't put out any other videos on any other topics, just because of time constraints and different projects I have going on that I don't have. And then sometimes my laptop camera doesn't even want to work with me. So all excuses and reasons behind, here we are today together for this sort of blab session, I guess, where I'm going to be kicking around some more ground on the distorted term of master. So thanks for joining. And I've already given this little preliminary, like I said, with the episode itself, episode number 6. That is a bit of a tip of an iceberg kind of tour around, which I knew while I was making it that I would probably continue on into something like this, because it's such a rich topic. There's so much to be said in different angles to look at the term, and to look at how we are masters. Who do we consider, if anyone, a master above us or to us? What does the term create an image of, and why? And can we look at some other images that are also compatible with the term that might be a bit more comfortable, and frame it in better context to where we can bring it back into positive lighting and understand through the complexity of it, we can find a balance and a neutrality that is overall positive. We don't have to drive it immediately into negativity of slave masters and see it from this strict dichotomy of really forced authority, of this directional, downward, really demeaning kind of way, to view it. But there's such an alignment around us in the world, and such a fed line in the mainstream propaganda, the Matrix, call it whatever you want to call it out there, but it's something that they really plaster a certain image around and really want them to be the focal point and to gather a lot of energy around. But what I try to offer, and what I did with that video series and here in the brainstorming session, is pull back the layers. Let's look at it from other angles. And as this is directed towards those of us who are ready to do that kind of stuff, who are adept students on a journey, understanding that what we are doing is seeking to see and examine, observe, dissect, not to define, slap labels on, think we know all about it, say it has to be that way forever. Everybody's got to agree with the version we just saw of it, and sort of memorialize it as is, and cement it, and then everybody's got to copy it and move on. I don't like that version whatsoever. I don't think we have to even function in that way, but that kind of thing is jammed down our throats. And it's, of course, the term master, and it's very dual purposes either way. It gets jammed down our throats, and then no matter which term you choose to look at it, even the positivity tried to bring to it, it can be immediately sort of diluted in a negative way, unfortunately, and reharnessed in this sort of self-serving way that, bends it over backwards or bends it over onto itself in a unsuited manner. But again, it's for self-service for some kind of reason, and the person or being or whatever that sees a purpose in doing that, of course, they do. And so it's hard to even talk about distortions and, of course, mastery without having a background in polarity and duality, a sort of alchemic and hermetic understanding of these basic principalities, opposing forces, and the work that is held within opposing forces, and also the third party work that becomes created while opposing forces do their work. A lot of times we get wrapped up in oppositions and in inflaming these extreme sides, and really embodying them and taking them to their full discoveries, and we forget or overlook that the bubbling of the third happening, and the creation of newness, that those two are actually making new space. Even in the refusal to ever come together, there is new space made. There's new combinations of potentials being rolled in the rebuttal, in the refusals, in the propulsion of revulsion away, right? All of the gray gradient in between becomes harvestable space. It becomes fertile soil of a garden to grow different plants that might kind of coerce and get together better, suited along, because it's more, there's more variabilities there. It's there's a spectrum of gradient of choice. It's not just black or white. But again, it's all about perspective and observation, and how deeply you choose to dive into a thing, or how far you want to pull back out of it. And this is the role of the conscious creator, and this is a version of a master. Masters understand this kind of thing. Not to say that we have mastery of the switching of the gears, the flipping of the lenses, diving in and out of consciousness, but that we know it's a vehicle to be driven in such a way, and that we're learning. I admit, be it so clumsily, and myself, I'm certainly learning clumsily, how to shift gears, how to change, how to move through those layers and observe the happenings, not jump into second gear and think I've always been there and I know how to drive and I know that's what's happening at that speed, how to brake, it's when you start to do the work, it speaks for itself. And you have to take it slow, and you have to be mindful. You really need to give yourself that great space. But again, that comes with the unfolding of this sort of eternal path of the student, that I like to call it. I see myself on, and to be an eternal student of life. And so this kind of stuff that I'm offering now in this series and these brainstorming sessions, they're really for students at my curve and my learning level, who want to take it deeper and want to look at the many aspects and understandings of truth and lies. And again, it's all service. This is so perfect that it works so well right now for sort of myself to offer that term, to speak on it, to dive deeper on it. It goes along with the cards that I do every month. This month, April, is just kicking off, and we have the Six of Pentacles as a theme. And the 6 in itself, is a great signifier of dual systems, of perseverance, in itself, of getting of hard times and things like that. But it also is a great opening to the second loop. This is why the 6 sometimes can be easily manipulated by negative service and by quote unquote evil, or whatever they want to call it, black magic or self-serving systems is what it is at the end of the day. I mean, you can put whatever labels, flavor of belief, and traditions upon it that you want, but it's self-serving systems. The 6 in itself, it is and has a strong resonance of power of self-service. It knows its worth and it values its own worth, and it does serve itself first because it's been through hard shakeups already of the 5. It already has definition with it. And again, it has that loop contained in it. If you want to look at the visual of the number 6, it shows the loop connected, but it's also the flipping. Now, because what I mean by the flipping, think of a figure 8. 1, 2, 3, and 4 are sort of the first loop of the figure that's coming around, the first conditional loop that happens, the manifestation of a thing around one topic. The initial turn has to happen, so to speak, to be a thing, to set a boundary. Once that initial turn is done, what it is a mirroring echoed effect that it jumps into the external world, and it goes and creates an external reflection of self out there for working in space to operate out in, creates the external service boundaries, a secondary loop of happenings. But it is a mirrored reflection. And we have to remember what happens when we flip something around. It becomes inverted. And we have to be mindful of that and use it as an examination and exploration to see ourselves from different side, from the back side of our head, and learn from it. Not to turn and hate how we look from behind and say we'll never do that again, or start changing things or degrading things or using it for manipulative purposes. But we must remember the power of choice exists always, because we are creator consciousness in action. Our power of choice is our bestowed gift here. So yeah, you do have, unfortunately, that option to manipulate in the flip. Turn it self-service. Reorient the system. The system could be originally oriented as well to self-service, but it's harder to kickstart a 1 to ever make that secondary loop in an initial turnaround self-service. Usually it just gets stuck at before 4, or 5 breaks it apart, and it never makes it into that sort of silver lining moments that the 6 in itself signifies. It's difficult to find that in a negative alignment. However, it's not impossible. We have backstories to all our psychopaths, right? All of the mainstream Hollywood evil classic superhero stories now showcase the backstory of the evil, and how he's not so evil because X, Y, and Z happened to him. So, there are make it or break it moments for evils that do push them beyond the boundaries into the secondary loop, and it's negatively aligned. However, it's harder to do that. It's less common. Like I said, mostly it's a dilution. Mostly it wrecks people in some kind of manner, and they don't continue in the self-serving manner that they created around them, because it's off of a poor alignment in the first place. It's not truth-based, and that's again why it's so difficult to push it into negative service. Yet again, self-fulfilling prophecy, and back to the master's topic as to why those who get to secondary looping in that higher pivotal position of a master in the slave-master dichotomy hold such resonance and hold such power over the slaves, and why it seems to be so hard to get up there, and why all systems seem to be set in a model that's very firm and difficult to ever break, because in fact it is. In itself, because it's set up in the model to be the service of that negativity, because we are under a filter of duality. The main playscape holds the resonance. The architecture is there. The individual isn't meant to impact that, really. The individual is meant to have the experience within the architecture that strengthens the individual soul in its journey, and it moves forward and through. But we get caught up, we get, lost in these slave master cycles, as I've talked about, and we start to bow down into servitude to the masters around us, and we become these negative slaves, and we become eternally shackled to falsely serving systems, and they're false truths, but they're loops on themselves, and so they're very convincing, and because they're held with such a strength, they're also kind of, like I said, it's this negative self-fulfilling prophecies, bad habits, things that you confirm, and they also have an external validation to themselves, these loopings that we get into, universal contracts, sort of. They're difficult to break for that reason. But there are, mastery on the other side is such a beautiful concept, and it's freeing. And as soon as the true master within starts to remember the true laws and bring light in, they break out of that. And again, this is why negative mastery can't have strong light around it, and why we have the ages, why we have cycles, why we have dark and light, and it's a cyclic thing. Because the dark needs the most dark in order to exert the most power, and bright light would just break it apart. Small lights are the only things that can gain momentum and coagulation in times of heavy negativity. And to bring it into now, again, into the moment, perhaps, we are in a place and space of heavy negativity. And I don't want to get caught into current events, but it just, to me, it brings in a purpose of really, why do we need to learn about systems? Why do we need to remember energetic operations, and that we are sort of these conduits of production and of receivership as well. We're antennas of sorts, and we're manifestors, and we do interactions and creations on 3 levels: mind, body, and spirit. And so we have to remember that we're manifesting on all 3 levels, we're interacting on all 3 levels, we're exchanging, we're giving and take, give and take happen on all of these aspects. It can seem chaotic and confusing, but when we remember rudimentary processes, that it's all happening in a generic, simplistic fashion of the 3, mind, body, and spirit, we can see the layers. We remember, okay, all things happen on these 3 layers, and these 3 layers manifest in 3 distinct ways, right? Physicality, we have electric thought body, and then we have magnetic spiritual resonance. All of them are very different, and they can take shape and form and embody in different ways, but they come together to create a whole. The whole in itself is a reflection of the dichotomy of light and shadow work happenings. And then we have the reflection of the toroidal happening, right? The inner and the outer systems of that whole, how they work in exchange, and how those 3 layers come together to create polarity, positive or negative directionality in the movement of the external world around us. And of course, then we have we have 3. So we have the trifold happenings of the external happenings, right? The coagulation of all of it, how the interactions of external happen with you, and where you fit into that ultimate big picture, and including all others in the co-creative space of the external, where we have very limited observation, management, assessment capabilities, over there. But it is a body sense of our own, and it is a part that we have 24/7 connection to, just a bit more or less tangible. So back to masters and systems, and to look at them now, and to say that within the term master, we have 2 different ideas happening. Now, I talked a little bit about this in the video. Sometimes it's contextually grammatical, and there's a distinct line between whether we're talking about a master as in someone in a place of authority over another, or a master of a skill in a trade. And that one can be seen more as an adjective, describing type of word that's conditional, whereas the subject would be the trade, the craft, the art that that the master works with, right? They're sort of codependent on that art, or work, or whatever their calling, service, craft is that they are a master of, right? The other master is the master of the students, and it's this pinnacle, higher up position of authority in itself. And that can be seen as more of like the noun. It's like it is the subject, and so sometimes there's this sort of defense that you have to be using one term or the other, and they're not sort of interchangeable completely. However, I don't really buy into that, and I think words are like magic in more ways than we offer to give them. And I think I used to kind of think that was fluff. I laugh a bit about it because, I still hold a skeptic's mind. I really do. Although I do love to have and bring in the more sort of idealistic child inside of me who wants to create and believe in magic and see the sort of utopian side of all of things, and to give way to unexpected, unexplained happenings, bigger things, and it's to hold a steady balance between the two, kind of, I guess, is my moral standing and is my best footing. But to give yourself and give myself a good chance to explore both. Don't let that steady footing keep you so guarded that you can't even genuinely go and look and poke around. And so, to do so, to look first at the term master. We have the interaction of ourselves with the word. And that's what I'd like to kind of talk about and look about first. Is to say that let's not just look at the term and how it's used, but let's look at the user of the term and how we actually think about it and choose to relate to the word. And when and where are we masters of what and how? Because the intention of usage of the word really starts with the individual, and the understanding and the knowledge and the information that we each individually take in about what the term could mean. That's what really can create a valid body of working when we go to choose to use the word, and of course the interpret the word when we hear others using the word. Because what happens a lot of times is when we get to exchanging with others or trying to teach, quote unquote, or enlighten others on some kind of thing that we've come upon, is that we sort of miss the new perspectives and information that they bring to the table. And also, we sort of maybe miss that they've already examined that point as well. So I think it's very helpful for us to sort of step out of this term for a minute and see if we have a sort of where our homeostasis lies. Do we have an overall negative immediate sense of the word? Do we have an overall positive sense of the word? And can we gauge that? And then whichever lies our comfortability, can we cast our gaze in the opposite direction for a moment and think about that? And for myself, what I notice and what I did notice is that the framing work of the word master completely, to me, it was a reactionary thing. It depended totally on the other and who was saying it. Not really how they were even saying it, but who they were. Very subject-based and very much immediately towards a figurehead, external image. to ever speak about master of something, of a craft, for me, I would need to be speaking already directly of that craft or of that working, and then to bring in that term, he or she is a master of that, or I'd really like to master that. And again, to master that, is the thing that is sort of that initial, really thin layer of ice that you skate across, and that it's just you use it in that manner. And how that's almost, it is sort of negatively aligned, it's sort of derogatory almost. When in fact, true master, who would master wants to become a master of a skill, they understand they're a student of it. The master becomes a master of his trade because he or she, but yeah, I'm saying he or she a lot, but sorry, I don't even know why I'm doing that now. It's sort of, what a bug to put in my own ear when I typically don't even do that. I just think grammatical generalities, why can't we just use the male? It's quicker, it's easier, it could just showcase everybody, But it's, again, this topic especially with the master, it gets so masculine that it's like it needs some feminine interjections, it needs some softness added to it. And how funny that is, right? In and of itself. I think that's a matrix overlay to really keep certain terms with this gravity, that when others go to interact with it, it already has a heavier gravity and tone, and so they're more likely to go down and meet it versus to try to really change it or even leave it where it's at and remember their own within them. Because, usually we want to help those below us. We want to meet people at their level. That's something that, good-hearted, regular, happy individuals, positive people typically have sort of been told. And again, it is sort of, that in itself is a negative, mind-controlling point that the masters feed down to us. And again, there's some are great masters, some are inverted masters, some do it with intention, and some masters have it unintentionally done to their practice and their craft. Because I really believe you go and read some people's words verbatim, and they are not preaching from a place of ego, a space about them claiming they are the master and wanting to teach from, their own way. Their own words are saying, they have become a master of this thing, or have begun to master this craft or topic or whatever working it is, and want to share it with others and pay homage to that inspiration, spirit, God, source, whoever, their guru, whatever the name and place that comes to mind for them, and their tradition and place, their backstory, right? They will draw connections and lineage to that. And, that's rare, and in itself is, shows, I believe the, really difficult times that we're in, and also the importance of doing the good work and knowing what type of service you really want to be a part of, what kind of master you want to be, and the different mastery points available to you, so that we don't get wrapped up and trapped in false inversions and forcing us into those versions, artificially and uncomfortably. And I've sort of talked around about, but that's all right. Again, it's such a variety of ways to look at it. Thinking now, perhaps, of making better notes coming at it again. Another try to talk again about masters and systems because no matter how I feel, I try to remove the personal bits of it and the purpose and the backstory. I seem to always get pulled into it. And sometimes the content that I wish to teach actually just gets pushed to the back and never discussed. And that is something that I'm working on doing better at. So thank you for bearing with me and listening to me in this half an hour of my own sort of hashing through difficult topic in a bit of a convoluted way. I appreciate your time and your ears to hear me speaking. Thank you for your wonderful contribution to our collective. We certainly wouldn't be the same without you. Thanks for witnessing mine, as always. I hope I'll catch you next time. Have a beautiful day or evening, wherever you are. And, yeah, talk to you soon.